Hello and welcome to the Ant-Man channel. It is Tuesday the 9th of December 2014 and I'm your host, Ant-Man. And I've got an article in front of me from the christianpost.com under politics. This is by Nap Nasworth. He is a Christian Post reporter. And the name of his article is Analysis, Top 5 Reasons Common Core Has Been a Disaster. Now a little illustration here, a picture of like a ball like in chain, and it's hooked up to a little kid, and he's like in the corner looking to the corner, and it says Common Core on the ball. Well, yeah, if you've seen my other previous videos of what I think about this kind of stuff, yeah, I go off on it. So this probably will be more of the same. It is kind of a dumbing down kind of program because, well, okay, I'm trying to not be as critical as I usually am, but it's true. It is a kind of a dumbing down program. Implementation of the Common Core State Standards Initiative has not gone well. Excuse me. Supporters and critics alike now agree, understanding why the education reform has been so rocky, could aid future policy initiatives. Here are 5 of the main reasons Common Core has been a disaster. Why is this important? Why? I mean, the government-run, news isn't going to tell you this kind of stuff, because I think it kind of serves them, it helps them in their purposes. And what I think it is that, pretty much, I have a opinion that Common Core kind of makes right-wingers out to be fascists without any real facts, just kind of like, they have tactics of doing that kind of stuff. Like if you pretty much never talk about like the good things, but you put certain titles on people who were good, because everybody kind of gets caught doing bad stuff. I don't know, it's kind of hard to like kind of bring up an example right now, but let me just get back into this. Number 1, no deliberative democracy. Common Core was put into effect sneakily rather than through the usual deliberative and democratic processes. Very suspect. The Common Core is a set of math and English standards for K-12 education developed by the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers, both of which are non-governmental organizations. Neither Congress nor state legislatures were involved in developing the standards. Is it hard to believe? I mean, you might have heard that there are things that are taught in biology books today that have been proven to be false in a court of law, and they have to do with the teaching of evolution. If you don't believe me, look it up. Let me see what else it says here. For comparison, look at how President George W. Bush's education reform, No Child Left Behind, was implemented. That legislation was debated in subcommittee hearings, committee hearings, and on the floors of the U.S. House and Senate before being passed on a bipartisan vote. While the debate was taking place in Congress, there was a public debate with newspaper reports and pro and con arguments presented in editorials, news programs, and water cooler talk across the nation. None of that happened when states adopted the Common Core. The Common Core was developed in a private meeting by a non-governmental body. States were then encouraged to adopt these standards in a Department of Education grant competition that was part of the 2009 stimulus bill. I mean, I beg people, especially if you're a teacher, to really look into this. I mean, this isn't just more making up conspiracy theories. This is actually, I think, at the very. I mean, if you want to get on the level here spiritually, Christ said, "Take something out by the root." He takes, the way that God does things is that He takes things out by the root. What is the root problem maybe in our culture today? I think it is that people who go to public school are being taught a very biased view that promotes, like the left and what they want to do. And believe me, it really does. I've looked at it. It does do that. I mean, if you don't believe me, go look at it for yourself. It's really at the core of what's going on, because if our kids are failing their classes, that doesn't mean we should dumb down the curriculum for them. The government is not going to fix our problems when they come to like our family issues and stuff like that. Because if a kid's failing in school, it's probably not getting anybody to show him. Nobody's giving them any time to, you know what I mean? Like, they're not putting in any time to help them, and that's unfortunate. And that's a moral issue. That's a family issue. But anyway, let's get back into this. Even some Common Core supporters now admit that the way it was implemented was a mistake. At an American Enterprise Institute panel in October, Chris Minich, current executive director of CCSSO and the Council Strategic Initiatives Director of Standards Assessment and Accountability in 2009, said that Common Core would be better off today if the federal government had not been involved by creating incentives and funding the testing consortia. By the time the standards had made its way to teachers, students, and families, most were taken by surprise, and due to the lack of deliberative democracy, proponents had not gone through the difficult task of building public support before the policy was thrust onto the public. You know, the left, the Democratic Party, you know, they have all of these titles, right? Like liberal or democratic or progressive, and they're the absolute opposite of that. I think that's like the funniest thing, is that they're like such hypocrites. You know, Thomas Jefferson was a liberal. That's what a real liberal was. But nowadays, being liberal just means, like, you know what I mean? Just being totally alright with all the things that are wrong. But anyway, yeah, so much for democracy right there, right? The Democrats sneak in things to get on with and yeah, they are sneaking it in to get on. It's a program for their agenda, for them to get votes. You know what I mean? And yeah, I've studied this stuff. I know what I'm talking about. I know how, like, you know, LBJ, and I know who, you know, is the founder of all this progressive stuff, and who they have this ideology that you're not smart enough to run your life, that they're smarter than you. And when you send your kids to public school, that's the kind of thought mentality that they're trying to instill in them, is that they should listen to the teachers and not their parents, because their parents are not as smart as their teachers. It's true. I'm the expert and you're not, and I tell you what's real and you listen to me, or you're an idiot. And yes, they use tactics like that. Richard Dawkins, who's like a super hardcore atheist, supposedly, even though he really does even contradict that in some of the things he says and believes in. But you know what I mean? He even says to atheists, yeah, if somebody promotes creation, you know, use tactics like insults and attack his character and talk badly about him. Use those type of tactics. And it's like, yeah, because you have no argument. You have no evidence for what you guys claim. But anyways, I got really off topic there. Number 2 is supporters demonized critics. Well, evolution is actually part of their curriculum. It's a failed philosophy, and they teach it in public school as if it's a fact. And they promote it on the television too, which is suspect. Who owns the prison system, the public school system, and the entertainment industry? Could it be the same people? I don't know. That's for you to look into. Common Core supporters also made the mistake of characterizing critics as a bunch of crazies. A May CP analysis pointed out many examples of this. Common Core critics have been derided as fringe voices, people who are comfortable with mediocrity, an ideological circus with hysterical claims and fevered accusations from the market share obsessed talk radio crowd. They're talking about me, the far right, me again, a mediocrity caucus, and white suburban moms opposed to educational Congress. Wow, that got racist real quick. Demonizing critics created additional problems for the Common Core. Isn't it always funny that the left they are arguing against, you know, conservatives and Christians and Republicans. They are. Let's not avoid that, even though there really isn't. That paradigm is false anyway. But let's just, for kicks and giggles, I guess, let's entertain that real quick. Isn't it funny that they're the first ones to pull the race card? And it's always based on history. I wasn't there. I know that it must have been crazy living in Abraham Lincoln's day. Let's be real, honest here. There must have been some tough days, man. Especially if you're African American. But like, Isn't it funny that they're the first ones to pull the race card when they're the founders of the KKK? When the guy running in their party was African American, and African Americans owned slaves. It's just it's illiteracy if you believe them in their tactics and the way that they try to get votes or persuade people to their way of thinking. First, supporters lost legitimacy when these claims were easily demonstrated as false. So demonizing critics created additional problems for the Common Core. Some of the harshest critics have been liberals, academics, and teachers. And second, by demonstrating an unwillingness to listen to the critics, Common Core supporters reinforced the critics' view that Common Core is top-down and elite-driven. The arrogance of these Common Core supporters is similar to that of Obamacare architect Jonathan Gruber, and there is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. That's the left-leaning, liberal, progressive mindset, is that I'm the expert, you're the stupid common person of society, that you have to listen to me, and whatever I say is true. I'm the Pope, I'm infallible, you listen to me. This is neo-feudalistic, like pre-neo-feudalistic training, I guess you could say. Fall in line, because I'm the expert, because I say what's fact and what's fiction. Who said that? Well, Jonathan Gruber said that the implementation of President Obama's signature healthcare reform law had a huge political advantage in its lack of transparency due to the stupidity of the American voter. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Number 3, no trial and error. Rather than pushing Common Core on an unsuspecting public using backdoor methods, supporters should have started small. In the United States Federalist system, states are often described as laboratories of democracy. Policies can be tried by early adopter states, while other states wait to see the results. If the results are positive, other states will adopt them. I know that my state of California is probably one of those, because we have a lot of stupid laws in this state, and that's due to lack of, maybe people being into politics and voting, but also that we have a lot of, liberals running this place too. And I mean, it is a super liberal place. When you think of California, what do you think about? You think about like surfing and listening to music and skateboarding, right? But yeah, that is what we're all into. But we're not all yuppies. We're not all hippies either. There is a lot of people that are there. You know what I mean? They're with it when it comes to liberty and truth and all that. Let's see. At the AEI October panel, Frederick Hess, Director of Education Policy Studies at AEI, said that 10 to 15 states likely would have adopted the Common Core on their own, even without the federal incentives. Hess is neither for nor against the Common Core standards, but has been critical of how they have been implemented. If Common Core had started that way, Hess noted, it would have been a truly and genuinely kind of state-led effort, which, if it was working and being implemented well, others would have wanted in. Let's get into number 4 here. No process to improve them. The developers of Common Core did not leave in place a process to improve the standards. I mean, we could go. This leads on to a lot of different topics, in my honest opinion. When it comes to the job market, when it comes to the free market system, how do we get innovation? How do we get people motivated to be better and be more excellent, if you will? Through reward systems. You see, when it comes to the minimum wage, people want it to be raised. But how does that really motivate anybody to want to become better at and want to pursue a greater, aspire to something greater than a McDonald's burger flipper or whatever they're called? You know what I mean? It's just that we have to think about those things when it comes to education. That's why I really do recommend a liberal arts education. Go learn from people who know the traditional, original, best way of teaching people, and that is through the things that made America great, not the things that they teach nowadays in Common Core. It's just they're kind of just like catering to people's ignorance instead of challenging you and inspiring you. And I mean by reading stuff like Pilgrim's Progress, or, you know what I mean, something good. doing stuff like that. But I really doubt that they're letting kids they're even telling kids about that. Anyways, no process to improve. The developers of the Common Core did not leave in place a process to improve the standards, and a perfect illustration of how the Common Core was put together haphazardly and without much forethought. The standards were created by a panel formed exclusively for the purpose of writing the standards. The panel was disbanded, and then the standards were copyrighted. So, as an education historian, Diane Ravitch has pointed out, if a state wanted to change the standards, how would they do so? The answer is not entirely clear. What if a state wanted to keep part of the standards but throw out other parts? Over 500 early childhood experts, for instance, signed a letter saying that the standards would be harmful for children in the early grade levels. No early childhood experts were part of the panel that developed the standards, so some states may want to dispose of at least that part of the standards. Whether they are legally allowed to do that is, however, murky. Legally, a state should not be able to change a copyrighted product if it does not own. It shouldn't be able to do that if it doesn't own it. But who would a state go to for permission? And if a state violated the copyright, who would sue them anyway? Others have even argued that the Common Core is not it's not something that should have been able to obtain a copyright in the first place, because according to copyright law, ideas, methods, and systems cannot be copyrighted. Thought police. This is some really Soviet Russia indoctrination type stuff, man. I mean, it really is. The stuff that they teach is so not true. You know what I mean? What do you learn in public school that helped you in life? Really though, there weren't the happiest moments of my life. I didn't get anything good out of that. I had, even though I was I wasn't the best student. I didn't have a lot of teachers that liked me. I did have good teachers though, but the few. But I mean, really though, public school is that's a whole different issue there, and I don't even want to get into that right now. Let's just, because I think the whole battle in the public school system, that's a lost cause, man. We need to just get back to old school, traditional values, man. We need to get to raising, as crazy as it sounds, we need to get back to teaching our kids and raising them ourselves. As much as that may hurt, to say that, but it's true. What are these public schools but child daycare centers? They're not producing good citizens of our country anyway. They're really not, and they're indoctrinating people with this stuff. So, some states like Florida have made changes to the Common Core. Those changes appear to be mostly additions to the standards, which is legal, rather than changing the existing standards. Suppose, however, that each state does ignore the potential copyright issues and changes the Common Core to its liking. That would undermine one of the main purposes of the Common Core to begin with. One of the primary impetuses for having a Common Core was that it would be, common, having all, or many states on the same set of standards. Comparisons could be made across states, and resources could be pooled for texts and testing materials. So without a national process for involving the standards, the reason for having Common Core standards in the first place has already been undermined. And it's funny because I just read an article, if you want to go check it out, one of my older videos from a couple days ago, where this person from China said that Common Core reminds them of what they were running from. Yeah. Just food for thought, I guess. Number 5, cronyism. Now that the secretive, top-down, elite-driven education reform was thrust onto unsuspecting students, parents, and teachers, American taxpayers will wonder why they are being asked to pay for what is turning out to be an extremely expensive project, with most of the benefits going to a few large companies. A significant portion of the taxpayer dollars for Common Core implementation will go to testing companies, and these testing companies were also involved in developing Common Core. As Julian Vasquez Halig, professor of educational leadership and policy studies and the director of the Doctorate in Educational Leadership program at California State University, points out on his blog, the work groups who designed the Common Core were comprised of 5 employees of ACT, 2 employees from a person affiliate, 6 employees from Achieve, 7 employees from the College Board, and 2 employees and co-founders of Student Achievement Partners. Teachers and administrators were part of the group that reviewed the standards, but not the group that wrote the standards. Parents and teachers may look at that situation and wonder if those who wrote the standards did so in the interest of their children or in their self-interest. There is, however, a more important question raised by Common Core cronyism. In all likelihood, those who wrote the standards see no conflict between their self-interest and what is best for American students. They are, after all, involved in those companies, many of which are non-profit, because they believe the work of those companies is to benefit to the benefit of students. To the benefit of students. The larger question that should be asked then is, why should they get to decide education policy for the nation? As Vasquez Haley pointed out, those involved in writing the Common Core have a particular view of education, which he wrote about. He wrote more about here and here, and they have links here if you want to go check it out. It is a legitimate view of how children should educate, but it is not a view shared by all educators, parents, and education professors. There are equally legitimate alternatives that should also be part of the national dialogue on education reform. Americans hold certain expectations of how education should be reformed, with parent and teacher input through deliberation, both talking and listening, and democratic processes, and through trial, error, and reforms at the local and state level. Common Core did none of those things, and that is why it has been a disaster. More evidence that this has been just, you could see, I mean, I don't even want to water it down. It is a tool of the devil, man. You want to know something, is that this has political purposes, and if they dumb us down through the education system, they can get us to do whatever they want. They could get us to read into all of the things that they do. They train you to think a certain way, not to use like cognitive thinking, but for example, just turn on the news, download their filtered opinion about everything, and that influences votes, I guess. That is how the left has always worked. But it's nothing new, and I'm just saying. Those are 5 things that are wrong with Common Core, and I would say that this is a tool of an enemy of our country, and you should think about that, the reality of what that actually is. But anyways, God bless you, and have a good day.